Imagine a library where countless books are locked away, forever out of reach. This is the unfortunate reality faced by many classic video games. They are trapped in a legal and logistical quagmire, slowly fading from our collective memory. While copyright law exists to protect creators, it has become a double-edged sword, hindering efforts to preserve these important pieces of gaming history. As technology advances, older games often become incompatible with modern systems. Without proper preservation efforts, these games risk being lost forever. Imagine no longer being able to experience the thrill of Pac-Man, the revolutionary gameplay of Super Mario Bros., or the immersive storytelling of Final Fantasy VII. These games, along with countless others, are more than just entertainment. They are cultural artifacts that reflect the evolution of technology, art, and storytelling. The disappearance of classic games is not a hypothetical problem, it's happening right now. The time to act is now, before it's too late. One of the most significant obstacles to preserving classic video games is copyright law. Unlike other forms of creative expression, video games occupy a unique legal space. They are often considered both software and creative works, subject to multiple layers of copyright protection. This complexity makes it challenging for preservationists to navigate the legal landscape and obtain the necessary permissions to archive and make these games accessible. The Entertainment Software Association, or ESA, argues that expanding exemptions for preservation could lead to widespread piracy and harm the commercial interests of game publishers. They fear that allowing institutions to distribute copies of preserved games could create a black market for these titles, undermining the sales of legitimate copies. Furthermore, the ESA contends that determining which games qualify for preservation is a slippery slope. They argue that allowing exemptions based on a game's age or cultural significance could create a subjective and potentially unfair system. Opponents of expanded preservation exemptions also point to the potential for abuse. They argue that allowing institutions to distribute copies of preserved games could pave the way for unauthorized commercial use. Despite the challenges, dedicated individuals and organizations are working tirelessly to preserve classic video games for future generations. These groups are driven by a passion for gaming history and a belief that these games are important cultural artifacts that deserve to be saved. One such organization is the Video Game History Foundation, or VGHF. Founded by renowned game journalist Frank Cifaldi, the VGHF is dedicated to documenting and preserving the history of video games. The organization collects and archives physical artifacts, such as game cartridges, consoles, and design documents. They also conduct interviews with game developers and industry pioneers to capture their stories and insights. Another key player in the fight for game preservation is the Software Preservation Network, or SPN. This international organization brings together archivists, librarians, and computer scientists who are dedicated to preserving all forms of software, including video games. These organizations face an uphill battle, but they remain committed to their mission. They understand that these games are more than just entertainment. They are interactive experiences that have shaped our society and continue to influence future generations. The challenges facing video game preservation stand in stark contrast to the accessibility of other forms of media. Books, films, and music are readily available through a variety of channels, from libraries and archives to streaming services and online retailers. One reason is the ephemeral nature of digital media. Unlike physical books or records, digital files can be easily lost or corrupted. Hard drives fail, servers shut down, and file formats become obsolete. Another factor is the complex web of copyright ownership in the video game industry. Games often involve multiple rights holders, including publishers, developers, and music composers. Furthermore, the video game industry has been slow to embrace digital preservation. The consequences of inaction are significant. If we fail to preserve video games, we risk losing access to an important part of our cultural history. Emulation, the process of mimicking the functionality of a particular hardware or software system on a different system, has emerged as a potential solution for preserving and accessing classic video games. Emulators allow users to play older games on modern computers and devices, even if the original hardware is no longer available. This technology has the potential to revolutionize game preservation and make classic titles accessible to a wider audience. One of the main advantages of emulation is its ability to overcome hardware limitations. As technology advances, older gaming consoles and computers become obsolete, making it difficult to play classic games on modern systems. Emulators bridge this gap by allowing users to run older games on newer hardware, ensuring that these games remain playable for years to come. Furthermore, emulation can enhance the gaming experience. Many emulators offer features that were not available on the original hardware, such as save states, cheat codes, and graphical enhancements. Despite its potential, emulation has faced resistance from some game publishers. They argue that emulation facilitates piracy and undermines their intellectual property rights. While the desire to preserve classic video games is shared by many, game publishers often find themselves at odds with preservation efforts. Understanding their perspective is crucial to finding common ground and developing sustainable solutions for preserving gaming history. Publishers, after all, are businesses with a responsibility to their shareholders and a need to protect their intellectual property. One of the primary concerns for publishers is the potential for lost revenue. They argue that making older games easily accessible through emulation or other means could cannibalize sales of their current titles. Another concern is the fear of setting a precedent that could harm their long-term business interests. Publishers worry that allowing widespread emulation or loosening copyright restrictions could embolden those who seek to profit from their intellectual property without authorization. Moreover, some publishers may be hesitant to revisit older titles due to concerns about their content aging poorly or not meeting modern standards. Finally, there's the issue of resources and logistics. Preserving and re-releasing older games requires time, money, and effort. The consequences of inaction in video game preservation are not hypothetical. They are already being felt by gamers and historians alike. The digital age, while offering unprecedented convenience and accessibility, has also introduced new challenges for preserving our cultural heritage. As online storefronts close, servers shut down, and physical media degrade, countless games are at risk of being lost forever. One striking example is the removal of the Sega Genesis Classics collection from the PlayStation and Nintendo Switch. Sega hasn't provided a reason for this removal, leaving fans in the dark and cutting off access to a beloved library of classic titles. While some of these games might be available elsewhere, the sudden disappearance from these platforms highlights the fragility of digital game preservation. The shutdown of online servers for multiplayer games presents another significant challenge. When a publisher decides to pull the plug on a game's online functionality, it effectively ends the ability for players to connect and compete with one another. The loss of online functionality can be seen as a death knell for these games, severing the social connections that made them so compelling. The deterioration of physical media is another pressing concern. Despite the challenges, there are glimmers of hope in the fight for video game preservation. Dedicated individuals, organizations, and even some game publishers are taking steps to ensure that classic games are not lost to time. One such success story is the work of the Video Game History Foundation, or VGHF. Through meticulous research and tireless advocacy, the VGHF has played a crucial role in recovering and preserving lost or forgotten games. One notable example is their involvement in the discovery and preservation of the source code for Oregon Trail, an educational game that has captured the imaginations of generations of players. Thanks to the VGHF's efforts, this iconic game can now be enjoyed by future generations in its original form. Another positive development is the increasing prevalence of official re-releases and remasters of classic games. Publishers, recognizing the enduring appeal of these titles, are making them available on modern platforms, often with updated graphics, enhanced gameplay, and other improvements. These re-releases not only introduce classic games to a new audience, but also provide a revenue stream that can support further preservation efforts. Moreover, the rise of digital distribution platforms has created new avenues for preserving and accessing older games. A notable example of this is the release of the source code for the Linux port of Doom, despite legal issues regarding the DMX sound library developed by Paul Radek. Within several months, several ports had been made back to DOS, resulting in many source ports existing today. This incident is seen by many as a positive development, with some viewing it as John Romero giving the middle finger to capitalism. The classic Doom code being leaked has allowed for a broader preservation and appreciation of the game, ensuring its legacy endures. Preserving video game history is not an insurmountable challenge, but it requires a concerted and collaborative effort from all stakeholders. Game publishers, preservationists, and gamers must work together to find solutions that balance the rights of creators with the need to ensure that these important cultural artifacts are not lost to time. By embracing innovative approaches and fostering a spirit of cooperation, we can create a brighter future for gaming history. One crucial step is for game publishers to adopt a more proactive approach to preservation. This includes releasing source code and other development materials to trusted archives, granting permission for emulation and other forms of preservation, and working with preservation organizations to develop industry-wide standards. By embracing preservation, publishers can not only protect their legacy, but also foster goodwill among gamers, and ensure that their creations continue to be enjoyed for years to come. Another vital step is for governments to recognize the cultural significance of video games and provide funding and legal frameworks that support preservation efforts. This includes establishing national archives dedicated to video games, providing grants to preservation organizations, and amending copyright law to allow for exemptions for preservation purposes. By investing in video game preservation, governments can demonstrate their commitment to preserving our shared cultural heritage. Finally, gamers themselves have a crucial role to play. Just like with what John Romero did with classic Doom back in the day, he wanted his game to survive the test of time, and it did. Romero's approach serves as a powerful example of what can be achieved when creators prioritize preservation. By releasing the source code for Doom, he not only ensured the game's longevity, but also empowered a community of developers and fans to keep the game alive and thriving through countless mods and adaptations. This act of preservation wasn't just about safeguarding a piece of software. It was about nurturing a cultural touchstone that has inspired generations of gamers and developers alike. Doom's enduring legacy demonstrates the profound impact that preservation can have, not only on the games themselves, but on the entire gaming community. As we look to the future, let us draw inspiration from John Romero's visionary approach. By working together, we can ensure that the games we love today will continue to inspire and entertain future generations. Whether it's through collaborative efforts between publishers and preservationists, supportive government policies, or the passionate involvement of gamers, we all have a role to play in preserving our digital heritage. The journey of video game preservation is ongoing, and its success depends on our collective commitment. Let's take the lessons learned from the past and apply them to create a future where the rich history of video games is celebrated, protected, and accessible to all. Thank you for watching, and remember, preserving our gaming history is not just about saving old games, it's about honoring the creativity and innovation that have shaped our world.